As the witch began to chant and mix her potions, Zai's mind wandered back to her sister. She remembered their childhood when they had been inseparable. But those memories were now overshadowed by the burning desire to have Makali for herself. After what felt like hours, the witch handed Zai a small vial filled with a dark, swirling liquid. "Give this to your sister. A few drops in her drink will suffice. But remember, the effects are irreversible." Zai took the vial, her hand trembling slightly. "Thank you." The witch's eyes bore into her. "You have chosen a dangerous path, child. Be prepared for the consequences." Zai nodded and left her heart heavy but resolute. She made her way back to the village, the vial clutched tightly in her hand. As she approached her home, she saw Amina and Makali sitting together, their laughter ringing out in the morning air. A sharp pang of jealousy twisted in Zai's chest. She watched as Makali leaned in close, whispering something that made Amina blush and smile. The sight only strengthened her resolve. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Zai saw her chance. She carefully poured a few drops of the potion into Amina's cup when no one was looking, her heart pounding in her chest. She handed the cup to her sister, forcing a smile. "Here, Amina. Drink this. It will help you regain your strength." Amina took the cup, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Zai. You've been so kind to me." Zai watched as Amina lifted the cup to her lips and took a sip. A sense of triumph mingled with guilt washed over her. She had done it. Soon, Amina's beauty would fade and Makali would turn to her. But as the evening wore on, a gnawing doubt began to creep into Zai's mind. She had crossed a line, and the witch's warning echoed in her ears. "Be prepared for the consequences." Zai forced herself to push the doubt aside. She had come too far to turn back now. She would have Makali, and nothing would stand in her way. As night fell and the village of Tumeni settled into sleep, Zai lay awake, her thoughts racing. She had set her plan in motion, but the cost of her actions was yet to be revealed. The days passed, and Zai watched with a twisted mix of satisfaction and anxiety as Amina's beauty began to fade. Her once radiant complexion dulled, her glossy hair lost its shine, and her bright eyes grew dim. The villagers noticed the change, and whispers began to circulate. "Poor Amina," they would say. "She was so beautiful. What could have happened?" Zai pretended to pity her sister, offering comforting words and feigned concern. "Don't worry, Amina," she would say, her voice laced with false sympathy. "We will find a way to help you." Despite Amina's transformation, Makali's love for her remained steadfast. He spent even more time with her, his concern deepening his affection. Zai seethed quietly, her plan not yielding the results she had hoped for. One afternoon, while Zai was in the garden, she overheard Makali and Amina talking in hushed tones under the large baobab tree. She crept closer, hiding behind a bush to listen. "Amina, my love," Makali said gently, "I have heard tales of a magic emerald deep within the forest. It is said to have the power to restore beauty and health. I believe it could help you." Amina looked at him with hope in her eyes. "Makali, do you really think it could work?" Makali nodded. "I do. And I want to take you there, to find the emerald and restore you to your true self." Zai's heart raced as she listened. An emerald that could restore beauty. This was the answer she had been searching for. If she could get her hands on the emerald, she could reverse the witch's curse and become even more beautiful than Amina ever was. That night, as the village slept, Zai prepared for her journey. She packed a small bag with supplies and tucked a dagger laced with poison into her belt. She slipped out of the hut heart and trailed Makali and Amina as they ventured into the forest. Unbeknownst to her, Abiola, Makali's sister, had also overheard their conversation and had ventured into the forest ahead of them, hoping to find the emerald and bring it back for Makali. The forest was dense and mysterious, its shadows playing tricks on the mind. Zai kept her distance, careful not to be seen. As they ventured deeper, the path grew more treacherous. Makali had to slow down to accommodate Amina, who struggled to keep up. "Amina, we can rest if you need to," Makali said, his concern evident. "No, I want to keep going," Amina replied, determination in her voice. "I want to find the emerald." Zai watched from the shadows, her eyes narrowed. She couldn't afford to waste any more time. With Makali and Amina slowed down, she took the opportunity to delve deeper into the forest, determined to find the emerald fast. The forest grew darker and more foreboding as Zai pressed on. Her footsteps were silent on the moss-covered ground, her senses heightened by the tension of the moment. As she ventured further, the forest grew denser and darker. Strange sounds filled the air, and shadows danced among the trees. Zai pressed on, her mind focused on the emerald. Suddenly, she heard a rustling behind her. She spun around, her hand on the hilt of her dagger. To her surprise, she saw Abiola, Makali's sister, moving through the trees. "Abiola," Zai whispered, her voice filled with shock. Abiola looked at her, equally surprised. "Zai, what are you doing here?" I could ask you the same thing," Zai replied, quickly composing herself. Abiola sighed. "I overheard Makali talking about the emerald. I wanted to find it for him, to help Amina. They deserve to be happy." Zai's mind raced. She hadn't anticipated Abiola's presence, but she quickly realized that this could work to her advantage. If Abiola found the emerald, Zai could take it from her. "Let's work together," Zai suggested, forcing a smile. "For Makali and Amina." Abiola hesitated but then nodded. "All right. We need to hurry." They continued deeper into the forest, the air growing colder and the path more treacherous. Zai kept her eyes on Abiola, her thoughts dark with the plan she had in mind. As they approached a clearing, Zai's heart leaped. In the center of the clearing, bathed in a shaft of sunlight, was a large, glowing emerald embedded in a rock. "There it is," Abiola whispered, her voice filled with awe. Zai's eyes gleamed with greed. "Yes. Let's take it and help Amina." Abiola approached the emerald cautiously, reaching out to touch it. Zai's hand tightened around the hilt of her dagger, ready to strike. But as Abiola's fingers brushed the emerald, a blinding light erupted, filling the clearing with a brilliant glow. Zai shielded her eyes, the light overwhelming her senses. When the light finally faded, she saw Abiola standing before the emerald, unharmed. "It worked," Abiola said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We have the emerald." Zai's mind raced. She needed to act quickly. As Abiola turned to face her, Zai drew the dagger, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm sorry, Abiola," Zai said coldly. "But this emerald is mine." Abiola's eyes widened in shock as Zai lunged forward, the poisoned dagger aimed at her heart. The clearing was silent except for the heavy breathing of Zai and Abiola. Zai's dagger glinted in the light, its poison-coated blade a deadly promise. Abiola, though frightened, stood her ground, clutching a rock she had picked up from the forest floor. "This emerald is mine, Abiola," Zai said coldly, her eyes narrowing. "I won't let you take it," Abiola replied, her voice trembling but determined. "Makali and Amina deserve it more." With a cry, Zai lunged at Abiola, swinging the dagger. Abiola dodged and struck out with the rock, catching Zai on the shoulder. Pain exploded through Zai's body, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on, driven by desperation and rage. The two women grappled, each fighting with all their strength. Zai managed to slash at Abiola's arm, drawing blood. Abiola cried out and swung the rock again, this time hitting Zai on the side of her head. Zai staggered, her vision blurring, but she kept her grip on the dagger. With a final, brutal effort, Zai plunged the dagger into Abiola's chest. Abiola gasped, her eyes wide with shock and pain. She fell to the ground, the rock slipping from her hand. Zai stood over her, breathing heavily, blood running down the side of her face. She knew she had to act quickly. She dragged Abiola's body to the nearby river and shoved it into the water. The current quickly carried it away, leaving no trace of the struggle. Zai retrieved the emerald and made her way back to the village, her wound throbbing painfully. She avoided the main paths, not wanting to be seen, and found an abandoned hut on the outskirts of the village. She climbed inside and collapsed on the floor, clutching the emerald to her chest. "I need to heal," she muttered to herself, pressing the emerald against her bleeding wound. "Restore me, as you would have restored Amina." For a moment, she felt a strange warmth spread through her body. But then the warmth turned to burning pain. She screamed as a nasty rash spread across her skin, red and inflamed. The emerald fell from her hand, its glow fading. "No, no, no!" Zai cried, staring at her ruined skin. "This can't be happening." She tried to calm herself, but the pain was unbearable. She spent the night writhing in agony, the rash spreading further. By morning, she was exhausted, her body covered in painful welts. As the sun rose, the village of Tumeni began to stir. Tando, Abiola's newlywed husband, made his way to the river to fetch water. He stopped abruptly when he saw something caught in the reeds. His heart sank as he recognized the lifeless form of Abiola. "Help!" Tando shouted, running back toward the village. "My wife, she's dead." Villagers quickly gathered, their faces pale with shock and sorrow as they pulled Abiola's body from the water. Mosi and Mzee Jabari were among the first to arrive. Mosi fell to his knees beside his daughter's body, tears streaming down his face. "Abiola, no. Who could have done this?" Mzee Jabari knelt beside him, gazing upon the corpse. "We will find out, Mosi. I promise you, we will find out who did this to her." As the villagers mourned, Zai lay hidden in the abandoned hut, her body racked with pain and fear. She had the emerald, but its power had betrayed her. She knew she couldn't hide forever. The village would soon discover what she had done. And when they did, there would be no forgiveness. Days passed, then Zai kept the emerald by her side despite the constant pain it inflicted. Her body was covered in rashes, the once beautiful skin now a canvas of inflamed welts. She could barely sleep, the pain keeping her awake and the fear of discovery gnawing at her mind. When she finally ventured out of the abandoned hut, the villagers stared at her in shock and disgust. The whispers and laughter that followed her were a cruel reminder of her fall from grace. "Look at her," the one villager whispered. "What happened to Zai?" "She looks terrible," another commented. "What a shame. She used to be so beautiful." The men who once admired her now turned away in repulsion. Zai felt their scornful gazes and heard their mocking laughter, each comment and sneer cutting into her like a knife. She clutched the emerald tightly, its presence a twisted comfort even as it continued to harm her. One afternoon, as Zai wandered near the edge of the forest, she saw Makali emerging from the trees, supporting a weakened Amina. They looked exhausted, their clothes torn and dirty from their search. Zai hid behind a tree, watching them approach the village. "Makali, I don't feel so good," Amina said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know, my love," Makali replied, his voice filled with sorrow. "We'll get you home. We'll figure something out." Zai's heart pounded as she listened. She had thought the emerald would be her salvation, but now she realized it had brought her nothing but pain. She watched as Makali and Amina approached the gathered villagers, their expressions weary and defeated. Makali addressed the crowd, his voice filled with frustration. The emerald we sought, it was a lie. We found nothing but false hope and wasted time. Amina nodded weakly. There is no magic emerald that can restore beauty. It was all just a story. The villagers murmured among themselves, their hopes dashed. Zai's stomach churned with a mix of fear and anger. She had believed the emerald would give her everything she wanted, but it had only made things worse. One of the villagers, an old woman named Nia, stepped forward. Amina, Makali, we are so sorry for your suffering. But we must find out who did this to Abiola. This village deserves justice. Makali nodded, his eyes filled with determination. We will find the one responsible. I swear it. Zai felt a cold sweat break out across her skin. She knew that if the villagers discovered her treachery, they would show no mercy. She had to keep her secret hidden, even as the emerald's curse continued to ravage her body. As Makali and Amina made their way back to their home, Zai slipped away, her mind racing. She needed to find a way to rid herself of the emerald and its curse. But how? The witch's words echoed in her mind, to take away beauty, one must give up something precious in return. Zai had already paid a steep price, but it seemed the cost was not yet fully paid. She clutched the emerald, feeling its cold, hard surface against her palm. She had to find a way to break its hold on her, or she would be lost forever. Back in the abandoned hut, Zai sat in the dim light, her body aching and her mind filled with desperation. She knew she had to confront the witch once more, to find a way to undo what had been done. But could she face the consequences of her actions? Could she bear to see the price she would have to pay? As night fell, Zai made her decision. She would return to the forest, to the witch whose residence lay in the same forest from which she had taken the cursed emerald. She would find a way to reverse the curse, no matter the cost. With a final, painful glance at the emerald, she tucked it into her bag and set out into the darkness, the shadows of the forest closing in around her. Zai stumbled through the forest, her body racked with pain and desperation. The memory of the villagers' scorn and Makali's promise for justice burned in her mind. She had to find the witch, to find a way to break the curse that had ruined her life. After what felt like hours, she finally reached the decrepit hut in the clearing. She hesitated only for a moment before knocking on the door. The same piercing eyes met hers as the witch opened the door, a knowing smile playing on her lips. You return, child, the witch said, her voice filled with dark amusement. I warned you of the consequences. Zai's voice trembled with desperation. Please, I need to reverse the curse. The emerald, it's killing me. The witch studied her for a moment, then motioned for her to enter. Very well. There is a way, but it comes at a price. Zai followed her inside, her heart pounding. I'll pay whatever it takes. Just tell me what I need to do. The witch nodded, her expression serious. To break the curse, you must take a man's hand in marriage. True commitment and love will lift the curse from your body. Zai's heart sank. The men in the village were repelled by her appearance. She knew it would be nearly impossible to find someone willing to marry her. Is there no other way? She asked, her voice breaking. The witch shook her head. That is the only way. You must find someone who will willingly take your hand in marriage. Only then will the curse be lifted. Despair washed over Zai, but she knew she had no choice. She thanked the witch and made her way back to the village, her mind racing with the impossibility of the task ahead. Upon her return, she saw the villagers' scornful gazes, their whispers echoing in her ears. None of the men would look at her, let alone consider marrying her. Her thoughts turned to Makali, the man she had always desired. She knew it was a long shot, but she had to try. She made her way to the abandoned hut near the river where Makali was staying with Amina. Her sister's condition had worsened, and Makali was tending to her with a heavy heart. Zai knocked on the door, and Makali opened it, surprise and concern in his eyes. "Zai, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you, Makali," Zai said, her voice trembling. "It's important." Makali hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. Amina lay on a makeshift bed, her breathing shallow and her skin pale. Makali's face was etched with worry. "What is it, Zai?" he asked, his voice strained. Zai took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Amina's condition, it's not going to get better. You have to accept that. And when she's gone, you'll need someone by your side. I can be that person for you, Makali. I can take care of you." Makali's eyes widened in shock and anger. "How can you say that, Zai? Amina is still fighting. We can't give up on her." Zai stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "Makali, I'm not saying we give up on her. But you need to think about the future. Amina might not make it, and you'll be left alone. I can be there for you. We can be together." Makali recoiled, his face filled with disgust. "You think I'd betray Amina like that? You think I'd ever choose you over her?" Zai's desperation turned to anger. "Amina is dying, Makali. And when she's gone, you'll have no one. You need to face reality. I'm offering you a chance to have someone by your side, to not be alone." Makali's eyes blazed with fury. "Get out, Zai. I never want to see you again. I will never choose you." Tears welled in Zai's eyes, but she refused to give up. "Please, Makali. Just consider it. You know I'm right." Makali pointed to the door, his voice cold. "Leave it now." Zai's heart shattered as she turned and left the hut, her mind reeling. She had failed. The witch's solution was impossible, and she was left with nothing but the curse and her shattered dreams. As she stumbled back to the abandoned hut where she had been hiding, she knew she had to find another way. But for now, she was trapped in a nightmare of her own making, with no way out. Zai returned to the witch's hut, her desperation evident in her haggard appearance and wild eyes. The witch greeted her with a knowing smile, sensing the dark determination that radiated from Zai. "You return once more, child," the witch said, her voice smooth and menacing. "What is it you seek this time?" Zai's voice was strained with urgency. "I need a potion that can make someone fall in love with me. I need Makali to be mine." The witch's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "Love cannot be forced, Zai. But there is something I can give you. A potion that will animate corpses and bend their wills to your command. However, it only works on the dead." Zai's heart raced as she considered the witch's offer. "Give it to me. I don't care about the consequences." The witch nodded and set to work, her hands moving swiftly as she mixed various ingredients into a bubbling cauldron. The potion glowed with an eerie green light as the witch poured it into a small vial and handed it to Zai. "Remember, the witch warned, this potion works only on the dead. Use it wisely." Zai took the vial, her mind already formulating a plan. She armed herself with the poison dagger, the emerald's cast power amplifying her thirst for vengeance. She crept toward the abandoned hut near the river, where Makali was tending to the ailing Amina. As she approached the hut, she saw Makali sitting beside Amina, his expression filled with sorrow and love. Zai's heart burned with jealousy and rage. She crept closer, her grip tightening on the dagger. With a sudden burst of speed, Zai lunged toward Makali, aiming the dagger at his heart. But Amina, sensing the danger, gathered her remaining strength and threw herself in front of Makali. The dagger sank into Amina's chest, and she cried out in pain, collapsing to the floor. Makali shouted in horror, "Amina, no!" Zai was momentarily stunned, but her resolve quickly hardened. She reached for the vial, ready to use the potion to reanimate Amina and bend her will. But as she opened the vial, the emerald around her neck began to glow with a blinding light. Amina's body shimmered, and to Zai's shock, she began to heal. Her beauty was restored, and her eyes fluttered open, filled with life. The emerald's power had brought her back. Makali embraced Amina, tears of relief streaming down his face. "Amina, you're alive." Zai's rage boiled over. She retrieved the dagger, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over, Makali. She will not take you from me." Makali stood protectively in front of Amina. "Zai, stop this madness. It will only lead to your destruction." Zai ignored him, lunging forward with the dagger. Makali dodged her attack, grabbing a nearby branch to defend himself. The two clashed in a desperate battle, the sounds of their struggle echoing through the heart. Zai swung the dagger wildly, her movements fueled by rage and desperation. Makali deflected her attacks, trying to disarm her without harming her. But Zai was relentless, her mind consumed by the need to win. "You will never have him, Zai," Amina shouted, her voice filled with strength. "He will never be yours." Zai screamed in frustration, her attacks becoming more erratic. Makali managed to knock the dagger from her hand, sending it skittering across the floor. Zai lunged for it, but Makali grabbed her, pulling her back. "It's over, Zai," Makali said firmly. "This has to end." Zai struggled against him, her eyes wild with madness. "I will not be denied. The emerald is mine. He is mine." Amina stood beside Makali, her beauty radiant and her resolve unshaken. "Zai, please. Stop this. You can still find redemption." But Zai was beyond reason. She broke free from Makali's grip and snatched up the dagger, turning it toward herself. "If I can't have him, then no one will." Before anyone could stop her, Zai plunged the dagger into her own chest. She fell to the ground, the life draining from her eyes as the emerald's light faded. Makali and Amina stood in stunned silence, the gravity of what had happened settling over them. Makali knelt beside Zai, a mixture of pity and sorrow on his face. "She was lost," he whispered, consumed by her own desires. Amina placed a hand on Makali's shoulder. "We must honor her memory by living our lives with love and compassion. It's what she could never find." Together they rose, leaving the hurt and the darkness behind. They had survived the trials and tribulations, their love stronger than ever. As they walked back to the village, hand in hand, they knew that they would face the future together, and no matter what challenges lay ahead. The village of Tumeni buzzed with excitement as preparations for the grand wedding of Makali and Amina were underway. Mosi had spared no expense, determined to celebrate the union of his son and the courageous young woman who had won his heart. The ceremony was held in the heart of the village, under the ancient baobab tree that had witnessed countless generations of love and life. Villagers gathered, their faces filled with joy and anticipation, eager to witness the marriage of Makali and Amina. Mosi stood proudly beside his son, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Today, we celebrate not only the love between Makali and Amina but also the strength and unity of our village," he announced, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Let this day be a reminder of the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit." Makali and Amina exchanged vows, their eyes locked in a gaze of unwavering devotion. The villagers cheered as they sealed their promises with a kiss, their love radiating through the crowd. After the ceremony, Mosi addressed the villagers once more. "My friends, it is with a heavy heart that I announce that this will be our final celebration in the village of Tumeni. Makali, Amina, and I will be returning to our kingdom, where Makali will take his rightful place on the throne." The villagers murmured in surprise and sadness, understanding the significance of Mosi's words. They had grown to love Makali and Amina, and the thought of their departure filled them with sorrow. Mosi continued, "We have shared many memories here, and this village will always hold a special place in our hearts. Thank you for your kindness and support. Farewell, my friends. May you continue to prosper and find happiness." With tears in their eyes, the villagers bid their beloved friends farewell, showering them with blessings and well wishes for their journey ahead. The journey to the faraway kingdom was long, but filled with hope and anticipation. Makali and Amina traveled with Mosi, their hearts full of excitement for the future. As they approached the gates of the kingdom, Makali's heart swelled with emotion. He hadn't seen his family since he was a child, and the thought of reuniting with them filled him with joy. The gates opened, and they were greeted by a grand procession. Makali's family stood at the entrance, their faces beaming with pride and happiness. His mother, Queen Sawa, rushed forward, embracing him tightly. "Makali, my son," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You have returned." Makali hugged his mother, feeling the warmth of her love. "Mother, I have missed you so much." Queen Sawa turned to Amina, her eyes filled with gratitude. "And you must be Amina. Thank you for bringing my son back to us." Amina smiled, her heart filled with warmth. "It is an honor to be here, Your Majesty." The royal family welcomed them with open arms, and the kingdom erupted in celebration. Makali was formally crowned as the new king, his regal presence commanding the respect and admiration of all who witnessed the ceremony. Amina stood beside him, her beauty and grace earning her the adoration of the kingdom. As they took their places on the thrones, the kingdom rejoiced. Makali and Amina were hailed as the new king and queen, their love and resilience an inspiration to all. They vowed to rule with compassion and wisdom, their bond strengthening the kingdom they now called home. In the days that followed, Makali and Amina worked tirelessly to bring prosperity and harmony to their kingdom. They honored the memory of their time in the village of Tumeni, carrying with them the lessons they had learned and the love they had found. And so, under the watchful eyes of their ancestors and the loving embrace of their people, King Makali and Queen Amina began their reign, their hearts forever intertwined in a love that had conquered all obstacles. We hope that you enjoyed the story. If you liked it, feel free to give our video a like and subscribe to our channel. We hope that you would share the video as well and check out some of our other stories. We appreciate your support, as it is what gives us the inspiration to continue our channel. We give you our blessings and farewells, and we hope to see you in the next video.
Ooh.